Hi everyone. It is now quite late in the night, close to midnight. So please excuse my volume. I feel surreal because tomorrow is the 9th of November. And well, not sure this will be my last clip. So I'm just going to try my best to share with you what the Lord has given me. So this is the Rapture Clock, which I'm going to share with you. Why is it called the Rapture Clock? Because between the hour hand and the minute hand, the angle is 153 degrees. And that is the 153 fish number of John. This was discovered by Brother Joshua from Switzerland. So John 21 verse 11, the very famous 153 fish scripture. And if you take 21:11 as a clock timing, on a 12-hour clock face you have 911, and we know 911 is very significant because of the attacks on the World Trade Center in 2001. So I'm proposing the rapture date 9th of November, which is tomorrow. A few hours from now I'll cross into 911, but for most of you, you'll probably have to wait several more hours. So let's look at the main numbers. 9, which is the 9th hour, 11 minutes, and 27 seconds. But actually is even more precise than that. You have 27 point 27 27 27 ... So that is represented by 3 divided by 11. That is very precise to get the 153 degree angle between the hour hand and the minute hand. So the rapture date is hidden or encoded in this clock timing. 9 o'clock points to the 9th day. 11 minutes points to the month of November. 27 points to the year, because the digits of 2025, 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5, that is 9, and 27 is 2 plus 7, which is 9. How about 3 over 11? There's a rapture message here. So the most appropriate scripture, which is Revelation 3:11, to the church of Philadelphia, Jesus said, "Behold, I come quickly. Hold that fast which thou hast, that no man can take thy crown." That is so important, that no man can take your crown. So this is definitely a rapture message, and the clock timing points to the rapture date. Now let's perhaps forget about the clock for now. Just take a look at the chapter itself, John chapter 21. In this chapter, there are many intriguing verses hinting at John's rapture. So if you go read the last 6 verses of this chapter, which is also the last chapter of the Gospel of John, from verses 20 to 25, in my last video clip, I did give you the details of these scriptures and how the scriptures hide the rapture of John. Right? The disciples thought that John would not die, which is a way of saying the rapture. So that last 6 verses pertains to John's rapture, and from verse 20 to verse 25 it points to the year, which is 2025. But what I didn't realize in the last clip was, if you count from verse 11, which is the 153 fish scripture, and you add 9 more verses, you will land on verse 20, the passage that describes John's rapture. So, in this chapter alone, we can find the rapture date hidden here as year 2025 and month November and the day, which is 9. So this is really incredible. Next, I want to share with you the threefold testimony of Jesus given by the saints, these 3 saints, Enoch, Elijah, and Daniel. If you look up the English gematria standard values, meaning A is 1, B is 2, ... Z is 26. And you will find that Enoch, Elijah, Daniel share the same value of 45. If you multiply these 3 numbers, you get a 5-digit product, 91125, which is the rapture date. Isn't that incredible? The threefold testimony of Jesus given by these 3 saints. I want to give a shout out to Nevin, Brother Nevin Joe. He was the first one, or he was, well, recently, right, stumbled upon these 3 numbers and their product, giving us 91125. But I want to give you another take to 91125. You can look at it as 20 plus 25 multiplied by 2025, because 45 can be split into 20 and 25. So that's another take on 91125. And I also looked at the Hebrew standard value of Enoch, Elijah, and Daniel, and I proceeded to add them up. I get a sum which is 225. So 225 obviously points to 2025. You have the same digits, 225 in 2025. And I also discovered another way of expressing 91125, which is 225 times 202.5, and you double that product. So you do it 2 times, add up, you get 91125. So this is the third way of obtaining 91125, the rapture date. So the first way would be 45 times 45 times 45. You get this triple testimony of Jesus given by the 3 saints. And the second way of getting 91125 is 20 plus 25, which is 2025, multiplied by 2025. And the last way, which is the third way, you can see it here, 225 times 202.5 plus 225 times 202.5, and you still get 91125, the rapture date. Now let's look at these three saints, and from the perspective of the rapture and the tribulation. I want to show you that Daniel points to the tribulation saints. Clearly, Enoch and Elijah, they have to point to the rapture saints, because they were the only two persons who did not die and were raptured. However, Daniel surprisingly points to the tribulation saints. Daniel has three friends who held positions in the kingdom of Babylon under King Nebuchadnezzar. And well, they were Jews, but because they refused to bow down to the image, the golden statue set up by Nebuchadnezzar, and they were thrown into the furnace, supposed to be killed by the fire. But Jesus, the fourth man, was with them and preserved their lives. And in fact, the Hebrew geometric values of these three names add up to 888. I did not confirm it, but I know it for a fact. Perhaps later on I'll check it up. But the point is, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, they represent tribulation saints. Daniel was thrown into the den of lions because he refused to obey the decree set by the king to only pray or bring their petition to King Darius. But Daniel purposely prayed to God, opened up the window and prayed to God, and he was caught. Right? He was set up and he walked into it because he did not want to deny his faith. And he was thrown into the den of lions. But God preserved him. So these four gentlemen went through fire, went through, prison and testing and basically the kind of tribulational scenarios one can imagine. So if you look at the letter to the church of Smyrna, you find that this church will go through the tribulation. So the word tribulation appears twice here, and they will be thrown into prison, much as Daniel, just like Daniel, was thrown into the den of lions to be eaten up, by the lion, to be killed. And this church, will be thrown into prison and have tribulation 10 days, and they have to be faithful unto death to, in a sense, save themselves, to get a crown of life and not to be hurt by the second death. So I want to point out the numbers of these 4 verses that pertains to the church of Smyrna, Smyrna. And what you can see is it is in Revelation chapter 2 verses 8 to 11. So you can form a 4-digit number 2811, and this number is the sum of the current Gregorian year as well as the current Hebrew year. So does that mean the tribulation is about to start? Actually, I would argue that we are already 46 days into the tribulation, and by tomorrow it will be the 47th day. So as we know, we have 1260 days plus 1290 days, which gives us 2550 days. But if we are 47 days into the tribulation, then the remaining number of days in the tribulation will be 2503 days, not a full 2550 days. Basically, the tribulation is shortened, if you like. So I believe we are in the tribulation already. Let's look at the rapture clock again, and we look at a verse which can be formed by the hour, minute and second hands, and that verse is verse 27911. 27 the seconds hand, and 9 the hour hand, followed by the minute hand. This scripture is Acts 28:11. You can already see the 2811 here, which is the sum of the current Gregorian year 2025 and the Hebrew year 786. But the scripture itself is pretty intriguing. Let's take a look. And after 3 months we departed in a ship of Alexandria, which had wintered in the isle, whose sign was Castor and Pollux. So Luke is the author of Acts, and when Luke say we, he was with Paul, the Apostle Paul, and the Apostle Paul was a prisoner in the ship, and they were heading eventually to Rome, because Paul was supposed to be judged in Rome and eventually executed. So this is the journey at the end of the book of Acts, and this very, very intriguing scripture pops up here with names such as Alexandria, Castor and Pollux. What are these? First thing, Alexandria is the name of a city in Egypt, and it is named after Alexander the Great. He is the third beast, the leopard. In terms of the body parts in the golden statue, he comes from the part which is the belly and the thigh. So we have a beast here, we have a world ruler in the person of Alexander the Great. And how about Castor and Pollux? They are the sons of Zeus. Zeus is the chief god of the Roman and Greek mythology. So he is the king of gods, so to speak, and his two sons represent the two beasts of Revelation 13. The Antichrist, the first beast, and the false prophet, the second beast. So here, in just one scripture, we get the idea that it points to the tribulation period, where you have the two beasts of Revelation and also a kind of Antichrist world empire. So, furthermore, Paul will eventually be beheaded, right? He was heading to Rome, and eventually he was beheaded in Rome a few years later. Some sources say it's between 4 to 7 years. So that's very interesting, because the tribulation is supposed to last for 7 years. So 2811 is the sum of the current Gregorian year and the current Hebrew year. And here we see the rapture clock not only gives us the rapture day, the rapture date, but also the year, and giving us the idea of the tribulation having arrived. Now, one more thing about the rapture clock, which is this very intriguing second, 27 seconds. Okay, but exactly is 27.272727 ... seconds. However, if we express this in terms of minutes, exactly it is 5/11 minute. 5 divided by 11. In terms of decimal is 0.454545 ... infinite. So you can see here the three saints are represented here: Enoch, Elijah, and Daniel. You have the 45, 45, 45. How about if we multiply the rapture date with 5/11? What do we get? Surprisingly, we get 91125, discovered by Brother Nevin. And 511 as a scripture, we can look at Hebrews chapter 11 verse 5, which records the rapture of Enoch. So by faith Enoch was translated that he should not see death, and was not found. He totally disappeared, vanished, because God had translated him. For before his translation he had this testimony that he pleased God. So we need to have faith to please God. Without faith it is impossible to please God. That is our testimony. All right, I have completed the rapture clock segment, and